equality has been achieved by Ding. If not, the pressure will continue. It is a big moment for Ding, this one. And Robert, knowing Ding, how good he is with this stuff, his calculation ability, it is a hard find, but if anyone can, it's Ding. B6 coming on the board, would you predict that?
Yes, Ding sees B6, and he's just double checking right now. He has 9 minutes remaining for just three moves. So he has 3 minutes per move, if my math still holds up. And this could give him the draw that he needs to make it to tomorrow's tiebreak. So it is a clearance tactic. Fabi, you spotted this from a distance. I mean, it's such a sick idea with rook takes e8 to follow, and this rook on c3 is loose when the bishop gives a check on b5. So I think for everybody who's watching, if you want to learn how to get better, you should always be thinking about things like there are two rooks on the same rank. What happens if the piece in between moves out the way? Well, this rook on c3 is undefended, which means if I could move this piece away with check, I would win this rook. So that's just how you can put these things together. It's not going to be easy, but chess sometimes is a bit difficult. And just to work on those tactical ideas, to get that pattern recognition, muscle memory. And I am waiting, Tanya, to answer your question. I'm waiting for Ding to play b6. And I can't really see, but it feels like he's looking in that direction. And yeah, b6 is just such a nice find.
Did you see him?
Why
It
don't we
actually
examine
looks
the
like he
endgame a little
feels the
bit?
tactics. It felt as if he was sensing this b6 option. He's definitely very aware of all these points that you're talking about, moving that middle piece out of the way so that these tactics can appear on the board. And looking at Ding, Robert, he's definitely looking at b6, but it is also a pawn sacrifice, at least a temporary one. So he needs to make sure that all those lines work out. Will Ding find b6? Fabi, what's your take on this?
Oh yeah, no, I mean he will find b6. I think he's already found it, probably before. I mean when he played rook h8. So I just wanted to, because it does lead to a pawn down rook endgame. I think that white is holding it, but we should consider how difficult it might be for white to hold that position. After b6, for example, rook takes b6, rook takes e8, king takes e8, bishop to b5. Let's say rook takes b5, rook takes c3. I think if white's rook gets to c7, c6, these squares probably draw. But if king d7, I think white, maybe it's not super important, but I think it's kind of important that white plays rook to f3, and if the king goes back, then rook to c3. And that shuffle keeps black from being able to contain the activity of white's rook.
Wow. Okay,
Makes
so
sense.
Ding,
Yeah.
3 minute think, still hasn't made the move b6. But it is what we're expecting. And after all those trades, all he has to do is evaluate and be confident in holding that pawn down rook endgame. He knows he's really close. Robert, we can sense the shift. He's moving around a little bit. Any moment, we're going to have a move. And I think for Ding fans, they're all hoping that it's b6. Otherwise, it can end up still being a draw, but it will be one that will require a longer defense from Ding. Yan will be the one grinding it down. So this is really a big moment right now.
Yeah, the good news for Ding is that b6 isn't required to draw this game. And one of the reasons why is in those variations, this second rook was in the way of the first rook, and then when bishop d7 happened, you had to come back and defend this bishop, which wasn't possible. But now, if you move this bishop out the way, this rook can go over to b8 and defend this b5 pawn. So I actually think that Ding has a couple ways to hold on here, but b6 does seem to get rid of the pressure as much of it as possible, and with that tactic available, it is going to allow him to make this draw. But if he just slides his rook to e3, I actually don't think that he's in grave danger, because if the bishop slides up, as I was mentioning, this rook can slide to b8, which is a very, very important move to defend this pawn.
He can play rook e3, but then he'll have to find a couple more moves in a very short amount of time. He's already down to 5 minutes. He's got three moves to make. If he plays b6, the follow up is pretty forced. You've got these four sequence of moves, and you end up in a rook pawn endgame. You're down a pawn, but you hold it. And of course, Ding will be doing that. He will be able to hold that position. But he needs to make a decision, and he needs to do it fast. The time is running out. I'm getting a bit nervous here. Come on, Ding. You've got to make a move.
I don't understand why rook e3, rook b3 is not much better for black. I mean, maybe there's a draw there, but I'm not seeing it. Uh, how do you play after rook e3, rook b3? I mean, I think this is his chance. Play b6 or yeah, you maybe it's still a draw, but I mean, it looks super unpleasant
Yeah,
because I don't see
Exactly.
the concrete way there after rook b3.
yeah, no, I think that you're going to lose a pawn, but I guess you can lose the pawn on b5, but you're not at least tactically vulnerable in the way that he has been with an exchange sacrifice on d3. So Ding
Down
is
to 4
really taking
minutes.
his time. Done
Wow.
4 minutes.
4 minutes on the clock. Rook e3 is possible. It might still keep the balance, but the position isn't completely equal. It isn't a neutralized position. And Yan there, he's not even leaving the playing hall anymore. He's putting the pressure. He's putting the pressure on the clock. He's putting the psychological pressure. It's so much of the mental game right now. And Ding, he cannot afford to freeze at this moment. 3 minutes, 49 seconds. He still has 3 moves to make for time control. Make a move.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I mean, I know people are thinking game seven all over again. Ding, make your move, don't freeze. He only has 3 moves to make. And if he plays b6, the next 3 moves will be obvious. He'll take this bishop, he'll play bishop b5 check. He can essentially pre move those decisions. So if he plays b6, he's out of it. But he played
On the board.
e6.
It has happened. B6 played. Ding, Liren keeps it precise, keeps it accurate. And Fabi, one has the feeling playoffs are going to happen. Playoffs incoming.
Yeah, this was a big miss by Jan. Of course, it's not like 100% a draw yet because he still has to defend pawn down rook endgame, but it seemed like that rook endgame is pretty drawable. And also the time is just not a factor. I mean, if he had played b6 with even 10 seconds, I would still be confident that he would get the remaining moves off in time. It would be pretty scary, but White's moves are forced. Rook e8 absolutely forced, or you resign probably. King e8, bishop to b5 check. That's the whole point of this entire uh, idea with b6. The discovery of the rook on g3, check, rook takes b5. Black can also play rook c6, but I don't really see why it changes much. So he takes, rook c3, probably king d7 will be played here. And then I think white, if black gets time to play a5, a4, then yeah, you're starting to think that maybe black could win this rook endgame. And I think Ding was just, when he was calculating b6, he was just thinking about, is this position a draw or not? Because it's not 100% obvious at first. But after king to d7, like let's say white starts wasting time, I think you might lose this. For example, f3, I'm already wondering if white is still in the drawing margin. King d7 and or a4. I would king d7 just keep control, and we already see that white is no longer in the drawing margin. So it's actually important that after king to d7, um, that white doesn't make a move like f3 because then a5 would be probably winning, but instead makes a move like rook to f3. F7 is attacked, king to e6 to defend it, and now rook to c3 back. You don't want to go behind, you don't want to go in front of the a pawn, because then rook in front of pawns, usually not too good. Rook behind pawns, that's really good. Here you also win the h6 pawn, so that's just an immediate draw. So after rook c3, black can, for example, cover with rook to b6. And here, probably white has a few ways of doing it. I think rook c7 is usually a good way. Yeah, and keep the rook on a7 because black's king cannot approach due to f7 pawn, and if f6, white could maybe the easiest way is just king, I don't know, maybe even h5 and just bring the king slowly to the king side, invade on the f5 square. But you also have rook to h7 potentially, so that would be a question for Ding to calculate. You also have f4 ideas, like white maybe just has a million ways to draw there already. So rook to f3, I think he'll play very, very quickly. Although he can also give a check on d3, it might have the same effect.
Yeah, he has
Because rook f,
options.
yeah, he has a bunch of options here. I just realized rook f3 does allow the rook to b2 intermediate check, which is a bit annoying.
But
That
why
probably
does that?
changes.
Why does it change anything, right? Because rook b2, you bring the king even back to f1. You have to defend this
Yeah,
pawn, and then I go back to a3, right?
but yeah, now you just draw by force because you actually win a pawn. Rook b7, rook a6 wins a pawn by force. There was once, I don't know if you remember this endgame, but it was Carlsen Nakamura from the Singfield Cup in 2018, where white had the rook on a6 against the pawn on a7 and had an extra pawn on the king side. So it was 4 against 4, and everyone was calling for a draw. But because the rook on a6 was pretty dominant, and because Hikaru just psychologically did not want to give away his a pawn, he eventually lost the game. even though it was a 4 against 4 and everyone was shocked. But I remember discussing that game with Rustam at the time, and Rustam was like the professional approach is you just give away the a pawn and play 4 against 3. Psychologically, you kind of don't want to do it. You want to keep your extra pawn, but the rook activity is more important. It's not relevant towards this position, but just the pattern of the rook on a6 against the pawn on a7 did did remind me of that game a little bit.